Hello, and welcome to the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast. Two friends with oceans of notions discussing the unseen forces in our lives through the lens of music, mystery, and crack. We have a Patreon at Weshtern Philosophy Pod. Don't forget the H. If you're enjoying the show and would like to see it grow, you can join this or make a once-off donation via Ko-fi.com. Both links are in the show notes below. In today's podcast, the finale to Season 3 of Weshtern Philosophy, Bart and myself take a trip back in time to our very first episode and revisit the topic of place a year later to see what's changed.
But I've actually just gotten more comfortable with looking back and a bit of melancholy. And there was a moment where we were in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, and we were by the river Waal, which is one of the main rivers. It's kind of the Shannon of the Shannon of the Netherlands. And being on the one side is the city, there's the river, and then there is the suburb where we used to live. We were sitting there looking over the river, and I just saw in my head just the little window of our house with warm light streaming out, and me and Yvonne and baby Louise being there. And I was just really contented that that was always going to be there, even though now we live in a different country. And I just had this sense of like, I just feel in my body in a way that's more real than the spreadsheet mind. I feel that that is forever there now.
That was lovely.
There we are. Hello. Good morning.
Hello.
It is...
Hello, chanty Bart.
It is end of the season vibes.
Uh-huh.
We are... we know it's a little on the short side this season, but I think Anthony and I wisely have decided to make the podcast work for us a little bit, and we had a busy old springtime with the wedding and loads of other stuff going on. And I know in the winter, the second season, the winter season, we really were like grasping for the handbrake to put her to bed. And it's funny because it has nothing to do with us not enjoying ourselves, but it's like there's such a expensive energy, and that you, like you said it, I think yesterday, where it's like at some point you need to land it so you can get excited about it again.
Yeah, you can miss it and get excited.
There's like a balance of excitement and tiredness, and then the end of the season, the tiredness comes up, and also it just gets really tricky over the summer.
Well, your kids are off school as well.
My kids are off school.
You live in a very different world.
Yeah, they are in the cool camp, the GEA camp in Kilfenora now for like 4 hours. That's the only time I get to do anything. A bit of work and and then hang out with them, which is amazing. But it's like, it's just hard to schedule anything, and then everyone...
Are you telling me you're choosing your children over the podcast, Bart? What the hell? You're not the man I thought you were.
No, but I'm the dad you thought I was. But it's everything. It's just funny. It's chaos anyway. I found Midsummer. I found pure chaos energy. Everything's going. And then now we're slowly coming out of that, going into the long walk.
Now we're over the solstice.
Yeah, we're over the solstice, so we're slowly... I mean, we're going to enjoy summer, and then we're going to slowly dip into autumn. But I think that it's a kind of a bit more wisdom on our part that we know when to end this. And it's not going to be a case of like season 1 was 16 episodes, second was 14, 12, 10, and then we'll come to just one really meaty episode at some point.
Wasn't it like the Beatles at the height of their popularity? They used to play for 25 minutes a set. Yeah. That's the goal, Bart.
Yeah, exactly.
25-minute episode twice a year.
But dense.
Incredibly dense. Just 15 people all talking at once. It's all good. It's as it's meant to be honest. Like, that's the thing. We're listening to the seasons and the cycles, and you're like, okay, a number is a number, but like also it's time to take a wee break. Yeah. And so we're going to do this episode. And you promised me you had a way into this.
Oh, okay. Well, if you say it, then it is contrived, but then you've shown how contrived it is. Does that make it not contrived then, if you show your hand with this?
I think it's called hanging a lantern on it.
Yeah.
So it's just like...
So me and Yvonne were away the last weekend doing the Fermanagh weekend with Niall, Graham and Michaela from Rooted Feminine Wellness, and it was amazing. It was a whole weekend about a group, half the group men, half the group women, holding space for each other and holding space for the wounds that each had inflicted on the other, as in men on women and women on men, and then creating healing for that. It was immensely powerful. And I'm eternally grateful to both of them and to all the people who showed up, and it was amazing for me and Yvonne. And I won't say too much about it because it's all, heady stuff and it's all people's private stories, but I don't think stuff like this is done nearly anywhere else or as well. It's so much to hold. But one of the things I love about Niall is not just that he is that he's great at holding stuff, and he's very kind, and he helped me heal so much. Also, he's an absolute lunatic. And there was one point where we were sitting quietly talking, and people were kind of talking about what they do in the summer. And I've had a lot of chats with him, and also when I did the Path of Sacred Kingship with him, and now with this Fermanagh weekend, and about, belonging, and how I do honestly believe in a past life I've lived in Ireland before it, or at least there's some reason I feel deeply connected to it. And we were talking about the summer holidays and about, what everyone was going to do. And Yvonne was kind of saying, yeah, we'll go to Holland. And I said something like, yeah, people always talk, like there's a lot of expats here in Clare, and they always talk about going home when they talk about going to the country they're from. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't feel like that. Home feels like here for me, and I just feel really. And I just went, yes, Bart, we fucking know, and it just cracked me up. No, and just it's wonderful when you're really solid with people that you can be very cruel to them. It's just like, yes, we've heard this story. Thank you. Can we just please shut up? So anyway,
we get it, Bart. You like Ireland.
Yeah, we know. You have a fucking podcast about it, dude. Just shut the fuck up, okay? So I don't know. There's something. I was like, oh man, you must be so triggering to so many people, but I am here for all that shit. I love that kind of just, will you shut up? Sure, you can only do that when you feel safe with people. But I think we were just chatting about what is, what would be a nice thing to talk about. And something you and I have talked about before is that it would actually be really nice to sometimes revisit certain topics, because so much shifts in us all the time. I think in people in general, but I think for you and I especially, because we have a bit of that seeker energy where a lot of stuff will change. Like even doing this weekend now, I feel like certain parts of me have really are really now migrating differently. That's probably not a good way of saying that, but
certain parts of you are migrating.
My ears are on my ankles, and it's all no, but it feels like stuff is moving. God, I was sick the day after. Yeah, go on.
Well, my thing was like, I think like any good podcast in its third season, like any good piece of media, it's time we started recycling old content.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing I wanted to speak to, because it feels like my tiny egoic mind goes, oh no, what will people think? That's a horrible, easy way out. But I don't think it is, because we definitely could pick a different topic. But I actually was listening to some of the old stuff, and I'm like, oh, that feels different now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think one thing I would love to convey is that we don't have any answers. Like we talk about these topics, and hopefully we raise some interesting things. But like you said, opinions change over time, and I think we live in a society that doesn't really allow for that very much. It's like, well, you said this, and there's a place for that too. But if we're talking about something like place or boundaries or masculinity, you're not going to say everything there is to say on that topic in an hour and a half. Yeah. And I would love to get to a place where we can revisit old topics a year or two down the line, and I think it would be a very interesting way to listen to like let's say place 1 from 2023, place 2 from 2024, place 3 from 2026, or whatever it is, and see how those things change over time, because the unseen forces that we are so interested in can't be nailed down. The effort, I think, is a valuable one to try to explore and to try to understand. But you can't just put them in a box and say, yeah, we're done with that. We've sorted boundaries. It's not possible. And also, I don't want to get rigid. I don't want to be like, well, I said this once, so I always have to say this. I'm like, no, I want to keep seeking and exploring and, see what happens. And so, so the idea for today is we'll go back to where it all began. Which is interesting because the finale of season 2 was Cycles. Yeah. But that's the one we recorded live in the morning dew, and that was a level of chaos that neither of us.
The fear.
And the carnage. So that was technically the topic, but really chaos would have been a better title for that episode. But this is a cycle because we're coming back to our very first episode where we talked about place. And we were talking about how every season has a bit of a theme. Season 1 kind of was the season of place. I think it really was. It was about being the sense of us being here in this place in the west of Ireland. Sure, we called it Western philosophy. Season 2 was the season of woo, which was more about, woo things. Season 3, I think, has been the season of...
Me.
Season, yeah. Season 3 has been
the season of Blarney. He's just come in now. Guys, do I have to spell
every
it out for
season
you?
is the season of Blarney. That's right. Get comfy, bud. Season 3 was interesting. There was nature. I think came up an awful lot. People's relationship came up an awful lot.
Can you go on?
Go on.
No, I need the notebooks. And I'm tethered to the.
You are
microphone.
tethered. Yeah. So you. Okay. So you've got 33 seconds to fill starting now. I recommend singing.
Ooh, no, I already started singing. I think I was just thinking when I said season 3, the season of Blarney, is that it's such a wonderful thing that Blarney will forever be with us in these episodes.
Oh yeah.
There's a real thing. I used to have a real hard time with melancholy. See, it isn't hard to feel shit when tangents appear in my head at an alarming rate. But I used to have an awful thing with... Yvonne loves melancholy. She's like, oh yeah, I remember in the 90s, this song, and she'd be listening to horrible fucking music, And whereas I always had a bit of a thing of I want the now and the future to be different than what it was before or something. But I've actually... through doing some work and process, just gotten more comfortable with looking back and a bit of melancholy. And there was a moment where we were in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, and we were by the river Waal, which is one of the main rivers. It's kind of the Shannon of of the Netherlands. And being on the one side is the city, there's the river, and then there is the suburb where we used to live. And we were sitting there looking over the river, and I just saw the little window in my head, just the little window of our house with warm light streaming out, and me and Yvonne and baby Louise being there. And I was just really contented that was always going to be there, even though now we live in a different country. Mm-hmm. And I just had this sense of I just feel in my body in a way like we discussed with Phelim, that's more real than the shopping list mind, the spreadsheet mind. I feel that is forever there now. But I love with Barnabas that he is forever present in these podcast episodes. I don't know. That just came across. See, when I go to the toilet and you just lock up, that's a you problem.
Yeah. Next time we'll let you bring the lab to the bathroom.
I was so bitchy, but I really enjoyed it. Sorry.
Yeah.
You didn't, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, what were you saying?
I'm thinking of this Ani DeFranco quote. It's
of course,
from fucking great. One of her things. It's more spoken word than it is song. I think it's called Fuel. Yeah. And it's people used to make records as in the record of an event, the event of people playing music in a room. Now everything's about cross-marketing. It's about guns or sunglasses you choose, and that's what a record was. That's why it's called a record. It was a record of an event, and it was a record of an event that happened in a particular place in a particular time.
Yeah.
And we've removed time and place from a lot of these records, right? So you go into a recording studio and you could start the recording in London and finish it up in Tokyo, you know?
Yeah.
And so time is removed, place is removed. The idea of people in a room, like a lot of people recording in like soundproofed booths and it being put together afterwards. Now, that's a certain type of recording. There are also other types, but we've reached a place with recording technology where you can eliminate time and place and relationship from it. Whereas, like, for me, the podcasts have always felt like field recordings. Basically, what I want these to be is field recordings with as high audio fidelity as I can manage, minimal editing, but a record of me and you and Blarney and maybe our guest in this particular room at this particular time, and... and again, I keep talking about John Cage, but I am very influenced by 433 and this idea of like a musical piece that's only comprised of the non-musical parts of a musical performance. And I wouldn't want to eliminate like the creaking of the chairs and the postman coming in. I think I got firewood delivered during one episode or something like that. And, so we did it with our wedding ceremony as well. Like, people were talking about the ritual we wrote, and
beautiful.
I think I said it already, but like basically we tried to honor the time, Bealtaine, the summer, and the place, your field, Ireland, and it kind of seems mad to me not to do that. So yeah, like when you say there'll always be a record of Blarney here, there's just a record of this. It's me, you, and Blarney in this space.
In this house. And
it will be
might be a different house in future. And
yes, yeah. Oh, it definitely will. But yeah, so place is important, and it can be eliminated, which I think is weird. It's
awful odd. And when you said it there, I saw a Coldplay song or something the other day, and it had like 12 authors. Yeah. And that's weird. Like author is also, it's not removed because it's actually added, but that really dilutes it in a weird way. I don't really understand why you would do that. Because they've written like, of course you can say Coldplay is super vanilla or whatever, that's fine. But they have written good songs. Like a song like The Scientist or something, I think that's a good song. Whether you love it or hate it, it's fine. But like, it's weird for me to start with that, have massive success, and then go, well, we can either just go, we've nothing to say at this point, but we can keep touring this, or we can take a break. We've more money than God, so that's not an issue. We can always start a tour again. People will always show up. And if I want to write again, that beautiful thing we started doing, I will do that. Very odd for me to go, no, you know what I'll do? I want to keep putting out music to stay relevant, but I'm going to do it with... Like, I like collaboration, don't get me wrong, but we all understand that when you have 12 people writing a song, I don't know. Like, you can have 12 people maybe writing an opera piece or adding layers to a musical theater number or something. I can kind of see that, but that's an odd one. And that, in a way, it's the opposite to what you were saying, but it kind of reminds me that the technology really allows for people all over the world to listen and pitch in, and otherwise that probably wouldn't be the case even. Yeah,
the only thing I'm thinking is somebody told me that Wolfpack, they credit everybody that plays on the song is credited as a songwriter because that means they can get royalties.
See, this is something I really like about what we do and about you as well, is that I thought I was quite certain of my point, and I'm like, okay, actually, maybe that's what it is, and that would be lovely. So, because I think isn't there, is it No Woman No Cry? Bob Marley. There was a guy that ran a soup kitchen or something, and he credited him as the co-writer of the song just legend. So he'd keep getting royalties. Legend, I love that.
But to come back to place, like, there are these placeless, what do they call them? Non-places or something like that. So for example, a petrol station. If you're on a long drive, if you're driving through the night and you stop at a petrol station somewhere between here and Dublin, there's absolutely no indications of where you are. like that petrol station, if it's part of a chain, it just looks like every other petrol station. It's completely devoid from the land. It's completely devoid from place. You know, airports are another one.
Yeah,
you could be in Singapore or Birmingham. Like it's the same. You know, it's functionally the same, hermetically sealed, air conditioned, with this weird internal iconography that's the same the whole world over. And it's unusual. It's unusual.
The same fear and authoritarian kind of processes. It's interesting with the petrol station. I was like, yeah, you're right. And in a way, they should be more unique. I'm still very fond. I love a drive through the night. Yeah, and I like, in a way, that these places are just... Is succouring the right word? I don't know. They're just supporting your journey. Where you're like, yeah, are you tired? Do you need a coffee?
Little oases of light.
Yeah, a little bit of food. Okay, back into the darkness. I really like the drive from Dublin to here, from the airport to here. Like, it could even be longer for me, which is mad. And it's
only
clearly
person in Ireland.
Yes, no, I know, and it's clearly said by someone who doesn't have to do it every week, because otherwise I would feel very differently.
Yeah.
But there is something about, especially landing in Dublin Airport and going, yeah, there's my car. The stress and the annoyance of passport now, I have to say, in Dublin Airport, it's not particularly bad. Schiphol in Amsterdam is a fucking shit show, nightmare, robotic, authoritarian hellhole. Anyway, just to put a lamp on that. But when you land in Dublin and you're like, oh, this is all uncomfortable. I've been sitting in a cramped flight, or for me it's cramped anyway. For you it's probably less so. And then you get to your car. How
absolutely dare you?
Oh yes, please throw a hissy fit. That would be great.
I am travel size. Go on.
I just saw an image of you kind of looking into the distance, having the overhead compartment just locked on you, just like, yeah, I'm okay. Click. But then you get into your car and then I'm like, yes, this is my car. This is like a little extension of my home in a weird way. I have my bits, my cup, my CDs. I can play my music. I have a map of where I'm going. Lovely.
Yeah, big giant A2 map.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I get the same. There's I can't remember who it is. Somebody did a photo book of American gas stations, like lit up at night, like these gas stations in the middle of nowhere, and it's fantastic. It's such a vibe, you know. But I think the petrol stations are comforting because they're a part of your journey. They're not intrinsically comforting. They're part of the overall experience of travel.
You would hate to
imagine
go
living there.
Yeah. Oh, and you would hate to be like, Anthony, let's go for a coffee at the Obama Plaza. Just as I go, you'd be like, oh my God.
Now, that said, I have to step in and say my wife loves the Obama Plaza and has written very positive Google reviews about it. She says it's great service. So.
It is good service. People are always very well done, Katie. You're here somewhere. But that's a great Google review to write. But it's.
But I get you. Yeah, it's so strange, you know.
And the lighting is just like this office type lighting. Yeah. But I think maybe for me, the journeying night. I was trying to find a nice poetic phrase. I didn't manage it. Is a place maybe for me. Like sure. I remember a lot of times like being in the back of my dad's car going to Austria, and we'd just have some music on, and maybe me and my sister be singing a little bit, and then we'd be maybe sleeping a little bit and looking out the window and just like, the fuck are we now? Or being on a train, like we once or twice took a sleeping train to. He worked a lot in Austria for like skiing trips and stuff. And taking the train where you're just like, you know, you have that rocking, and then suddenly there's all these bright lights of a station. You're like, what the fuck are we now? Yeah. Okay, Mannheim. Okay, grand. Yeah. You know, and like I feel quite held by being in a vehicle and watching the world go by. Even when me and Yvonne went to this weekend in Wicklow now, like just for some reason, Google Maps in Ireland is such a funny thing because it just sends you. It kind of goes, that must be a road, and it just sends you through places where you're like, we every trip we go, we look at each other and we go, there must be a better way to do this, where you just know there's a main motorway you could take, and then you could take one little.
I sometimes wonder,
but I quite like it because it sends you through weird fields and by strange houses, and you go, yeah, kind of cool.
I wonder, does Google, like 1 in 10 people, it just sends you off somewhere for a fucking laugh? You know, it's just like, let's see what happens if we direct them down this road.
Yeah.
Gather a bit of data.
Yeah, because when we were nearly back home, we were like coming out of Limerick. So we were like, okay, we know where we're going. And suddenly went like, okay, go right here. And I was like, I definitely don't think so, but maybe something happened. And then we just went off and it just went, oh, now your journey is going to take 25 minutes longer. And we're like, okay. Yeah, exactly. Like, you can just Google and go, you with your ideas about Google will punish you.
But I do love a sleeper train.
Yeah.
I love a long haul flight, again, because I am travel size. But like, I love that. You step on an airplane, you watch some like dodgy action movies.
Yeah.
I got really into the Godzilla versus Kong series when I was going over and back to the States last year. Got really attached to Kong. Something about a monkey that shows emotion. A big ape. A big emotional ape. I can relate to that.
What are you? Is this how you're getting back at me?
No, I'm
the travel size
talking about myself.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Big emotional ape.
But
who could he be talking about? But I wonder if it's a place or if it's an experience. But it feels like a place to me.
See, for me, place is located in place.
No, yeah, of course, yeah. That's why it's weird to say.
But like those, yeah. So I think it's more experiential. But yeah, there is definite. You are connected with the environment. You know.
Yeah, the environment of the road or something. But how is your experience? We don't do this often. We're ask a direct question, but how has your experience of living here changed since we last talked about it? You can also go, that doesn't work for me.
There's no. How dare you?
Yeah.
You beast.
You emotional ape.
I am thinking about it. I was talking about myself with the emotional ape.
I know, but
now I'm remembering.
And
now I'm remembering the movies and how cranky Godzilla is the whole time, and he's just like. He's got this big scowl, like particularly in, which one is the one where he goes pink, but there's just like a shot of his face straight on. And it's hard to make like a reptile's face expressive, right? Because they don't have like muscles, but they give him this like angry, like, you're just like, it's, sometimes if Katie has to wake me up from a nap, I think that's exactly what I look like. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I am Godzilla. You know,
maybe I am Godzilla.
Just like full of fury and fire and wrecking shit, and Bart is the emotional ape. I don't know. Maybe that is the dynamic.
I think people had to pick anyway.
But I got genuinely invested, and that is like, if we're talking about place, it's only on an airplane I would connect with those movies and those characters in the way I did.
Yeah, and there's something about the options being removed.
Yeah.
And you're like, I just need to pass the time. And there's something really liberating about that. I think that's why I enjoy it as well. It's like, what can I do? I can sing. I can maybe have a phone call with someone, but usually I'll be on my own. Mm-hmm. I can sing, I can listen to a podcast, I could be in silence just thinking about something, and the road. Yeah. There's a really funny thing, because you mentioned Godzilla, that I don't know, so not the first one, but the first modern version of Godzilla, I think, was very popular when Yvonne was small. Mm-hmm. So they all call each other like Godzilla in a weird way. So she often calls her mom, like, so mam, you would say here, mom in Nederlands, so it's just the same in Dutch. But she calls her Momzil all the time. So and her brother Rube, she calls Rubezil. So there's like a real Godzilla is a big part of her family. Just want to say that. Well,
it's funny if you look at when Godzilla appeared, and like, he's this force, radioactive force that destroys Japan. Like, if you look at the way America views radiation gives us the Incredible Hulk and Spider-Man. Like, radiation makes superheroes, and if you look at the way Japan treats radiation, it makes these horrible destructive monsters. There. So it's like, How did these two countries differ in their experience with radiation
God,
energy?
You said it there, I was like, oh yeah. Because obviously I'm aware of, but oh God, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it funny though how like it comes out in the archetypes and the stories as well?
I'm just thinking, did they also not have the huge nuclear reactor fail?
Yeah, Fukushima.
Yeah, so they had that as well. So they didn't have the bombs, but then they were, which you hardly ever hear happening. Like, I mean, we're not going to get into a whole nuclear thing, but they seem to be mostly quite safe. And it's
do not fucking jinx it.
No, I know. Sorry. Okay, fuck. Okay, stop. Sorry. What do I do?
Nuclear.
Please help me. Stop.
We're literally nuclear arms. We're just.
I know, but I'm not talking about nuclear arms. I'm talking about the energy.
Oh, the energy. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting.
Yeah.
That the most famous place where that went wrong, apart from Chernobyl, I suppose, is there where they had the bombs at.
But
okay, do I need to do any?
No,
I'm really superstitious. Do I need to anything?
Knock on wood, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But there's another thing, isn't it? That like Chernobyl's only ever going to be known for one thing. You know?
Yeah, where they're not.
You know, like what else will Chernobyl ever be known for? So the place, the association of the place has been completely taken over. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and especially if a place wasn't particularly famous before, I suppose, because I suppose those cities in Japan were already quite big places. And
yeah, like when you hear about Hiroshima, you don't think about the lovely tourist destination. You think about what happened there.
Well, that is true as well. You still think about that, but there is a little more to it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like when you think of Auschwitz, you're not like, oh, it was something else, but there also isn't anything else really there.
Yeah.
They renamed it as well, didn't they? I think it was a different Polish name. I think that was the German.
Yeah, well, Auschwitz doesn't sound very Polish, but I guess maybe what's happening there is those places are stepping in to serve an archetypical function. As in, you know, as Auschwitz as a shorthand for the evil that human beings are capable of,
kind of thing,
Hiroshima, and you know, in terms of like warfare against civilians and stuff like that. Like with these, they become Chernobyl as nuclear disasters. You know, like there have been other nuclear disasters, but like Chernobyl is the go-to, and so a place becomes something else.
Yeah. Would you call it? Would an archetype be the right word for it? Like, it's not really, is it? Titanic isn't an archetype. It's more of an
metaphor, I suppose. But like the idea of archetypes is that they're fluid. So I would say that the Titanic was serving an archetypical function. Yeah. As in, like, I'm even thinking of like another one that what's that one? Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. God, yeah. You know, that line from, who wrote that? Feck it, that always. But this idea of like humanity creating something enormous and challenging the gods, and then realizing that it, you know, hubris, pride coming before a fall. It's one of the oldest stories. So I would say that's, you know, Icarus and Daedalus. Yeah, that is. Ozymandias is the poem. It is the Titanic. So like all of those are, you know, they're archetypes or they're archetypical representations of this. Yeah. This thing that humanity has, this attribute of humanity that keeps coming up again and again. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny with certain words. I know how to use them, but I wouldn't be able to define them very well. Archetype, I think, is one of them, because archetypal is easier because it's an archetypal story, but it's. So an archetype is probably, would you call it an element of humanity? The way I describe it is like, if you're talking about so in Jung you've got the conscious, the unconscious, and the collective unconscious. So the conscious is, you know, self-explanatory. The unconscious is what we now call the subconscious, you know, those things we're not aware of. And then the collective unconscious would be the things that we share with other people, you know. And I think archetypes live in the collective unconscious. So like things just keep cropping up across cultures and across times. And they will change, because that's the thing. You can never look at an archetype and say, yes, fire always means destruction. Because fire is also cooking and creation, and fire will mean different things, and different thing in Siberia to Australia and stuff. So the whole idea of archetypes, I think, is that they're fluid and malleable, and they have a certain meaning for a certain person at a certain time, or a certain group of people at a certain time. And that's not universal either. So it's a little bit like that record of place, you know, like we have pieces of art that are very impactful at a time, and then we look at them 100 years on, and we're like, oh, that's a bit, maybe you'd call it problematic now, but that's because you're removing it from its time, you know, like I'm going off on one now, but the Sufis have this idea that when they're talking about like little proverbs and pithy things and things to help you get along your way to spiritual enlightenment or whatever, they call them prescriptions, and they're like medical prescriptions, and it's like none of these are good for everyone at every time period. These are meant to be prescribed for certain people at a certain time
in a certain place.
So then you're like, oh, you write them down and definitely, you know, read them and enjoy them and stuff, but remember that these were written, if this was written 400 years ago in the Middle East, it might be relevant to you or it might not, you know. So it's that idea of like holding the fluidity as well.
It's interesting when things are still applicable. Like I remember first coming across the bits of Rumi, you know, and you're just like, how someone could have nailed. But I think I suppose it's extracted to quite a high meta level. Why it's still applicable? It's not so specific, but still it feels quite. You know, or like the stuff like the cracks is where the light comes in, and that everyone now really strongly resonates with that. So I don't know. I wonder if that's a cycle where it's come back to a place that's similar to that time, or if it's been kind of made abstract enough that we can always. But it feels really. When I first read that, I was like, mind blown by all the stuff he was saying. Yeah.
I was reading an interview with Haruki Murakami, whose works I really, really enjoy. And I know that I don't pay too much attention to literary criticism and stuff, but like when I was an undergrad, he was hot shit, and I think the tide in the West turned against him a small bit, and now it's maybe coming back. I'm not sure. But he was talking about how he said, in times of great confusion, people connect very strongly with my books. So he said, like in a lot of like post-Soviet countries, like when his books were translated, they were really popular in like the aftermath of these countries splitting from the Soviet Union and gaining independence. And he said, I think it's because a lot of the characters in my books are quite lost and don't really know what's going on. That in times of great confusion and upheaval, people really gravitate towards them. And so I think that's a really interesting idea, that you can make a piece of art and you've just made it at the wrong time. Like we hear that all the time about artists that aren't, you know, appreciated in their own lifetime. I remember being at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam for 7 or 8 hours and going to the little Van Gogh.
I was just thinking of him when you said that.
Yeah. And there's a man that like is maybe the archetypical painter,
that's it as well.
You know, and he is like the first person you think of possibly when you think of a great master painter, and completely unappreciated in his own time.
Yeah, it was, in a way, it felt nearly like a bit self-indulgent slop kind of stuff, but there was a Doctor Who episode from a couple of years ago where he was brought into this time where he could see his own popularity. And I found it quite moving. Yeah. You know, it's like, it was well played. Like, I think that show's gone completely off the rails, but it's like that, and there's something true about that kind of stuff as well. Yeah, there is. Well, this is one of those unseen forces, isn't it? But there is something like what I just said about seeing in my head my old house and seeing that there will always be a part of us kind of in that time, in that space together. There is something about him, that story being told of him recognizing his own value, that's quite true. Yeah. And I suppose, for me also, because that world of people who've passed is very real, so that also helps. But that feels then like that story has been resolved in a way as well. That story of the unrecognized, amazing artist.
Yeah. It's
or in his case, I mean, not
Yeah.
in general. But
no, yeah, and of course he's dead. Like, he doesn't know, but there is a part of it that is
see,
resolved.
that's the part that I can't. I can't agree with.
Like
but
I
that's fine.
remember I was watching, I read a review of Inglourious Bastards, the Quentin Tarantino film, and somebody was like, Inglourious Bastards provides a much needed alternative ending to World War II. And I'm like, I love that. Like, you know, at the end of Inglourious
That's
Bastards,
very fun. No, I know it well.
they blow up the cinema and kill Hitler. I'm like, great, you know. And I'm like, you know, it is funny to go back and oh, Katie's going to the gym.
Katie's
Go on, pay the podcast tax.
Katie's going to the gym
Yeah.
for her last session.
Do you have a message for our listeners on our final episode of the season?
Get caught up in the grief of the end of the season, I guess.
Yeah, just like really go into the
for
grief.
it.
Yeah.
I know a few people who are gonna be upset, but yeah, that's for you to go into. Yeah.
And if
That's
they
amazing.
need support, are you offering your services, Katie? If you need,
I'm offering my services. I'm offering an example of find another hobby.
Katie walks out of the room.
That was nice energy you brought. Thank you, Katie. I'm thinking of future Anthony, who's going to really open up the game to get your voice on it loud enough. But
Say it louder.
oh God, there's very spicy energy coming in.
Yeah. I've been scary, huh?
I like it, and I am afraid.
Yeah.
I heard that there's a dedication to Blarney.
There is.
Fucking love it.
Yeah, I know. I had to do it, Katie. He didn't.
He's a king.
He's a king.
Blarney is a king.
Blarney is a king.
Oh God.
I know, you're a good boy. You know, Blarney also has a Pisces moon, like you.
Oh, that's why we get on so well. Oh, he's so
You're
wonderful.
so porous to your worlds.
Just the look you just gave, I was just like, okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's leave it there.
Let's do another kiss on camera. Sorry, I forgot that you were doing the pod for a second. I hope you
Just-
guys have a great end.
What
Thank
the
you.
heck?
Okay.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on. Let's just, thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
If you sit still, it'll, yeah.
Sorry, honey, for the embarrassment.
It's all good, baby. Just I'm honestly.
We're just terrified. That's just-
And also, editor Anthony is like, is any of this getting picked up, or am I going to have to get Katie to overdub her lines later?
that would be really funny.
That'd be
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah. Just put in other random stuff on top of it. Do you ever see when they do that on Reddit, where they like post a question and it'll be like, do you have any good tips for unblocking a toilet or something like that? And people will post like 10,000 answers, and then they'll change the question to like, I'm constipated, any advice? The context changes massively.
That
So
is very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were talking about Inglourious Bastards and the different ending being much needed. That's kind of nice. I found it. I think I've watched the beginning of that film a lot and not the ending.
yeah.
I didn't find the ending particularly interesting.
Yeah.
Because also it's quite ridiculous, or it gets
Yeah,
quite horror-y,
yeah.
where Hitler just gets absolutely torn to shreds and
Yeah.
he's just like a rubber puppet, and it's a bit like, but the beginning, oh my God, it's such great acting by Christoph Waltz.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's one take there where the lady who has the Cinnamon is in the resistance, and whose family he has murdered, and then they're having like Apfelstrudel together, and he's just sitting there and he just looks at her and he goes, "There's something I've been meaning to ask you, but I don't know what it was," you know. And it's just that I think he says it in French, but it's
Yeah.
like it's like it just, the tension is amazing.
Yeah.
But then there was that other film with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I watched last year, and there it's terrifying, the alternate ending, because it's about the Manson murders.
Yeah.
And then at the ending, spoiler alert, you hear her voice. God, what's her name again? So she was the
Sharon-
actress who.
Not Sharon Tate, no.
No. Anyway, the actress who also was murdered. and you just hear her kind of over the intercom talking to the neighbor, and like Brad Pitt has sorted it all out by being on LSD and just murdering all the hippies who were coming in to get them, and you just hear her kind of like really like gently lovely voice, Margot Robbie, kind of just like oh, what was going on, and oh, that sounds really scary or something, and it was all fine, and that's really that's kind of terrifying, because you know that's not what happened, you know. Yeah,
that's a weird one. And again, I have mixed feelings about Tarantino. I'm glad he exists. I'm glad he's out there. He loves movies, and he loves
and he has made some amazing moments of cinema.
Yeah,
it feels to me more like there's really wonderful moments than that they're overall. But maybe that's
and I do love how much he loves old classic Hong Kong films and like B movies and stuff like that. Like but I didn't watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because he kind of made a mockery of Bruce Lee in it as well, and I didn't love that.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't really like that. Yeah,
and he really doubled down in it, which is Tarantino. Like if he was going to like, you know, he doesn't take criticism well. You know, that's kind of, you know, fair enough. You'd have to be pretty but thick-skinned to make the movies he makes, you know. But I'm just like, when you're dealing with real people like that, if you are going to go change things, I mean, to be honest,
I think he actually believes that though about Bruce Lee. I think he believes that's the way it is.
Yeah, but
maybe that's the issue.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff there, and like Bruce Lee himself was. Somebody asked Bruce Lee one time, who would win in a fight between you and Muhammad Ali, and he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? He'd tear me in half," you know. And like there was all this stuff about like Gene LaBelle was giving out about Bruce Lee, saying because he knew no grappling, and you know people, you know, in this era of MMA, people are like, oh, Bruce Lee would be torn apart. And the really sad thing is, near the end of his life, he was studying grappling quite intensively with Gene LaBelle, but he died at 33, so he didn't have, and he was one of the first people in the world to start amalgamating these things.
And it's one of those context things where it's like, that's just nonsense.
Yeah, and there's plenty to criticize about the dude. Like, he was an egomaniac, but it's kind of sad but like, he was, you know, whatever about Bruce Lee, the martial artist, in 1970, the mid-70s, when was Enter the Dragon? Anyway, 73 or 75 or something. I'm getting the years so wrong lately. But anyway, you had a Hollywood movie with an Asian lead. Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. Like, how often does that even happen these days? Yeah. You know, like, there was some really admirable stuff happening there. He broke his back and he was told he would never walk again. He spent 3 months in bed and wrote these incredible books. And they're not just books on martial arts, they're books on philosophy and pedagogy and how you actually teach these things and stuff. And then I think for me, just to see somebody who's so much to him reduced to a punchline is one thing. But then, like, Hitler, I'm like, do whatever you want with him, you know?
Yeah. There's an interesting thing about that with... I get that. Like, there is, if someone is a bit of a hero or an idol to you, then it can be sometimes hard to take that. On the other hand, I was talking to Yvonne about this yesterday, that sometimes there's something nice about trying to see behind what someone actually meant. Like, I do think in that case, when I looked at that scene, it just looked like, someone just having a huge ego and that kind of being deflated, and that kind of worked. But I don't have a really strong connection to Bruce Lee, so I don't know much about him either, so it doesn't mean that much. But there's this is quite a relaxed episode. Am I gonna get myself into trouble now again? Yeah, of course I am. So
I don't know why you even ask.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about I don't know how we got to it, but we were talking in the car about, quite often people will say something that is wrong, but it's rather than having the knee-jerk reaction of going, fuck off, away with that, it's interesting to go, what's actually going on there? Oh, you know what it was? So on this weekend, we were talking a lot about connection to land, and we did a wonderful sweat lodge, and everyone sang songs about the land here, and I did too. I actually also felt a bit like, do I have something that's fitting? Because a lot of the songs I sing maybe aren't about that necessarily, but there was something and people really resonated with it. But Yvonne was a bit like, I don't have, I don't know if I have anything to offer in that regard. And then I don't want to share too much personal stuff,
Sure.
but I think this is okay. I'll check with her anyway. But then Nal said, would you be able to sing something in Dutch? And she said, no, we don't have anything that connects with land in that way. And we were just talking about this and thinking about this. I think in part it has to do with the erosion. So this is interesting, talking about place as well. Thank God we're coming back to the topic a little bit. But this partly has to do with the erosion of culture that's definitely happened. There's been kind of a culture in Holland has been made quite accessible. Also, there's been so many influence on it that it needs to just be kind of a container for loads of different stuff, I think. But I was also thinking it might have something to do with the sea, because so much of the land was reclaimed from the sea.
Sure.
And there are actually powerful songs about the sea. And now we're getting to the problematic part. There was a Dutch prime minister about 15 years ago who said, we need to get back to the VOC mentaliteit, which means the mentality of the colonizing. So he didn't say it like that, but he was kind of like, so the VOC, so what would you, is that like the East Indies Company? Something like, so it's, the Dutch organization that dealt with the colonization of the world. So when he said that, the only response was, will you shut the fuck up, please? That was horrible, and there was slavery, and all of that is true, and it probably also was the right response for what he was saying. But I was thinking, and I don't exactly know how I came to this, but I was kind of thinking, for the first time, before I would have always just like, geez, dude, fuck off, get away with that. But now I was thinking, oh, maybe it has something to do with the connection to the sea. And I think this has come up a lot this season as well. Like, I like it when we can look at the other side of a thing, because obviously everyone was right. That was a horrible time where Dutch people did horrible things to so many indigenous cultures around the world that should never have been. And I take all of that, but it's kind of interesting to then also go, he wasn't thinking of that. Like, he wasn't like, hey guys, will we just do slavery again? Like, that wasn't what he was saying. But what was he saying? And I was like, oh, maybe it has something to do with, it was all about the sea. So I suppose even with did you think I landed that okay, or am I going to get murdered?
No, I think it's fair enough. I think it's good that you're not pro-slavery. I think that's
you bastard.
Appreciate it.
That's horrible.
Is there anything to be said for another slavery?
That's horrible the way you made the joke there, because now it sounds like I'm a bastard.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. It's interesting to look at, like, it was such a stupid thing as well to say. Like, it wasn't a smart thing to say. And then I kind of go, because so often politicians are just spin doctoring the fuck out of everything. It's like, how can I get more popular? So, and he said something that was so dumb. It was so dumb to say that. So that kind of makes me more interested. Like, so there must have been a real feeling in you about something else, because you weren't thinking about that bit, which, you can criticize him a lot for that, because he was ignorant to all that pain, which is so huge that you're like, dude, how can you be ignorant about that? But it is interesting. Please agree with me that it's interesting to look at what is the other intention is.
I haven't had enough coffee. I can feel what you're saying is that, like, sometimes ignoring the 95% that was awful, which you shouldn't ignore. But by ignoring it and just pointing at the 5% that made Holland, like, successful and maybe generated a lot of employment and wealth, and just be like, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, but I don't even mean that. I don't even mean that. I don't mean it in a rational way. I don't mean like, Jesus, it was fucking well organized. I don't mean, or at least, that's always the old thing. I don't know if they say it here as well, but they were always like, Hitler, well, at least the trains ran on time. Like, it's a horrible thing to say, but that's not what I mean at all. That's kind of like a really dark joke, But, oh God, Bart, why do you do this shit? Well, I hope you all understand what I mean. And otherwise, this was the last episode. But it's not even about that, like, oh, there was something to what we were doing. That's not what I mean. I mean more like, what is the longing, or what is the energy connection? Oh, maybe it is to the sea.
Right.
Maybe he was speaking to, we are a sea people. and he did it in a horrible way.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested in people. So I'm interested. It's not about, maybe there was some part of that was good.
Right.
No, it was all fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessary. And it was like, ugh.
But
it's more like, someone made a huge political error. So someone whose whole business is about getting elected. Sorry, but that's mainly what they're about. They're not like, I'm going to serve my country. No, you just want to get
politicians'
rich
job
and
is
power.
getting elected.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not actually serving.
So you went against all that so strongly. So what was that strong pull that made you forget yourself?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I mean. So not like, it was a strong pull of organized something. No, it was about, maybe we are a sea people.
Yeah, maybe.
That's just what
I get it. I'm just remembering another local politician that during the water tax protests made the comment, do you think water just falls from the sky?
Yeah, I remember that.
And I'm just like thinking, is there any deeper meaning there? And I'm like, I don't think there is in this case. But, if you're talking about a place like the Netherlands, the lowlands, right? Yeah. That's what I mean. Is that what Nederland?
Nederland means Netherland, so lowland.
The lowlands,
basically.
yeah.
No, it's not even multiple, it's just lowland.
Lowlands, lowland, yeah. And then you've got all the parts of the Netherlands that were reclaimed from the sea, and of course you would be a seafaring people because... Yeah. Look how many countries are easily accessible to you if you take to the sea. You can get to Denmark and Scandinavia and
and there was wars won against England, for instance, just on the sea, which is such a weird...
Well, that's the thing I think we forget is what an extraordinary naval power a lot of countries were, but that's what allowed Britain to put so much pressure on China, was that China had a very weak navy in the 19th century and Britain had a very strong navy, and you forget what that used to, that allowed Britain to, dominate China for a century and a half,
Which is such a mad thing to even think.
Isn't
they're
it?
So apart and the size is so different. And I was listening to a thing on World War II because middle age, No, no, I think to be honest...
Because you're a dad.
I think to be fair to myself, I grew up with a really... powerful World War II history, because where I was born was the pivotal part of Operation Market Garden.
That's
and that was a real emotional thing to that. I might do something with that, because I got all these memories flooding back of, we had a veteran, Tom Owens, who was flying one of the glider the glider planes. So they had these glider planes that were pulled by motorized planes, and they just let him go.
Yeah.
And they floated into Holland and into the Netherlands, and then parachutists jumped out of it, and he had to stay in that paper plane and land it in the ground and then go and try and free a foreign land. And he never came... Yeah, this is a bit random, but it's nice to tell his story, I think. He lost his best friend, and actually just across from where my first job was, working in a cafe. And so his friend is buried in the big, actually beautiful memorial site, burial grounds in Oosterbeek. And he didn't come back to Oosterbeek. So the Battle of Arnhem is quite famous, and Oosterbeek is just a little village next to it where I grew up. And after the Battle of Arnhem went completely south, a bridge too far, they all fled into Oosterbeek, and that's in the polder. So the wetlands where our house was, that's where they took little dinghies and escaped the last British soldiers. But he...
Because Operation Market Garden was a failure.
Yeah, it was a failure because they were successful, and then they went too fast, too far. They got isolated and they got destroyed, and the city of Arnhem got completely destroyed. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, actually, a lot of people, just local people, hid in Burgers Zoo, which is a huge, lovely zoo now, actually, which has anyway, but they all... Oh, and in the open air museum that's there. Anyway, different. My sister got married there last year. Anyway, I'm digressing. But he stayed away for a really long time until he was an old man, and then he came back, I think on the 50th anniversary of the end of the war. So 95 or something. So he must have been 70 or something. And I remember as a young boy just seeing how torn up he was with the beautiful reception they got. Because everyone was like, these young guys just got completely murdered on our soil to try and free us. You know, and he just could not take in that it wasn't a failure. And then when he died about 10 years later, he actually wanted to be buried with his friend. So imagine that. Yeah. Imagine having a friend when you're 18 or something. He gets shot in some foreign land. And then he got, you know, all that time later, he got cremated in England. And with his wife, who was Molly, who was fucking brilliant. I actually saw a lot of her after his passing as well. She was amazing. And then he got buried, like his ashes got buried by the headstone of his friend who, you know, he had missed for all that time. I think it's quite a powerful story, but how the fuck did I get here? Oh yeah, so I was listening to World War II podcast because I just think that history is quite alive for me because it's so tangible. Like the church where where we had the funeral for my grandparents, for instance, also has like, what do you call those panes of glass? The
stained glass?
Stained glass. Yeah. With like parachutists and stuff. Oh, wow. So there's a lot of, you know, it's really alive. And, but yeah, I'm bringing it back in. But even now telling it, I feel it's an emotional thing for me because I was small, I suppose. But, and it was mad to see that these people had to deal with such darkness. And then we lived in a nice, free, open village, you know. So anyway, but I was listening to this podcast and, oh yeah, that was the thing. So it was only a small point that I tangented on, but about naval power, that everyone has this story of the Battle of Britain of like, oh, a few scrappy pilots held the Germans at bay, and this historian was like, yeah, the Air Force, but they would have never gotten on land here because they had a huge fucking navy. And that was such an interesting thing where I was like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. That's a story that's told, but it's actually, the reality is quite different. They would have never been able to assail that island. So,
yeah,
you know, anyway. Thank you. You were writing, thank God, because I've been tangenting and getting myself into trouble.
No, it's all good. I have a particular relationship with Arnhem because of the Medal of Honor video games.
Yes.
So when they made Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg did so much research that spinning off from Saving Private Ryan, they also made Band of Brothers as the TV series, and they made a series of video games called Medal of Honor, starring OSS agent in World War II who just happens to be on the front lines of every major offensive in Europe.
He was just picked up and transported to every...
He's either the best or the worst luck in the world. Yeah. But it was very well researched, and there's a level called Arnhem Nights, and it's about... I can't remember, because Market Garden, it was Operation Market and Garden. They were two different, I think one was tanks and then one was infantry or something like that. I can't remember, but like...
Well, there's a lot of paratroopers anyway.
Yeah, there were, yeah. I think but like, I remember like setting charges on the bridge was part of that, you know, and it's really weird that like when I went to visit a friend in Holland, in Wageningen University, I went for a bike ride and I saw Nijmegen, and I went to Nijmegen. I went to the World War II museum there, and I didn't make it to Arnhem, but I saw Arnhem was like a few miles down the road and stuff. And it was like, I already had a relationship with that place, and like it's a Hollywoody video gamey relationship, but one based in shit that actually happened. So I knew about Nijmegen and Arnhem. I knew about the place. I think they call it tangential learning or something like that, when you're like you're playing and you're shooting bad guys and stuff, but you're learning at the same time. And I remember I played, is it one of the Assassin's Creed 2s? Is it Brotherhood? One of them set in Rome anyway. In I don't know what century, in the Renaissance, and Da Vinci is around, and when I visited Rome in real life, I was able to navigate from like the Parthenon to the Trevi Fountain.
Just running over rooftops.
Yeah, just parkouring around the place. But I was like able to go, okay, the Parthenon's there, so I know the Trevi Fountains. And like I was actually able, like the Colosseum's over there. And I was able to roughly navigate the city because I'd spent so much time in a video game in it. What a weird relationship with place. But like, isn't that gorgeous? Like we're the first generation that can do that.
Yeah. And we loved those Assassin's Creed games that I played a lot of back in the day. They not anymore, unfortunately. But like they, I know they meticulous. Like this is quite a free hand with narrative.
Yeah.
But I know they really researched the fucking, what would you call it? Like the maps of the cities and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I'd been to like a lot of places in Italy before, and when them playing it, I was like, yeah, that's what it's like. Like, yeah, there's not people jumping off the tower in Florence so much, but I hope, Jesus.
Yeah.
But and landing in a little bit of hay.
A little bit of hay. You're like, that's going to do nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Your spine's still broken.
Well, it might absorb some of the blood.
It helps with the cleanup.
But it's that kind of feels cheap to us or something. But I think it's great, and it's like the basic level of that is having a teacher who's a great storyteller. I remember that about Greek mythology. That we had a great history teacher who would just be able to make these stories come alive. But also, like, when a musical like Hamilton comes out, suddenly everyone knows about a lot of stuff that happened in the American War of Independence, you know, and it's made with dance and song, but is there anything wrong with that? Like, nobody thinks they were dancing their way through that war, but you learn a lot. And with those video games as well, like, I do think, especially if they're done well. I played one of those ones about a lot of like the war in with Japan, and that taught me a lot because that's less taught over in the Netherlands, because obviously the war was there a lot, so that's more relevant to people. But it's interesting that place comes into all these things. And then another example of an archetypal kind of thing of like a bridge too far. Like I literally say that to people when they're like, oh, where are you from? Like from Arnhem. Well, you might know that was the bridge too far. They took all these bridges and they went, it was kind of hubris again. We need to be the first to liberate, and left them fucking hanging there. Yeah. Jeez, we've touched on a lot there. Did I write something down? No.
When I was I think I've told the story before, but when I was in the War Museum in Nijmegen, there was, it's all, or at least when I was there, it was all in Dutch, you know.
That's surprising to me.
Yeah. I was surprised too, actually.
They might not have thought that it'd be interesting too, because usually when they know there'd be other people from abroad coming in, they would always have English. So they probably, maybe they wouldn't have expected people.
Yeah, I don't know. But it was very, very much in Dutch. But there was, and I remember there was an M1 Garand, and it's rifle. The infantry rifle of World War II, you know, and it's like one of the main weapons in those video games. And like it was there on a stand, you could pick it up and you could feel where the soldiers' hands had worn grooves in the wood, you know. And that was when you talk about objects having power, like that was, I think what wood is, it's malleable, you know. If you use it a lot, you see it on guitars and stuff like that. You can see where people have played, like where the strumming scrapes against the body of the guitar and stuff. Wood holds memory, you know. Stone does too. You go to these old churches and you see the stones worn in the middle from tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of footsteps. You know. There's
something to that as well, isn't there, of the repeated action? Because I was looking at my guitar, like it's more powerful what you were saying about people praying, I suppose. But even with the guitar, like when I look at my guitar strum, I don't think I'm hitting guitar, but clearly I am, because you can see it worn where I'm strumming. Yeah. But it's just because it happens maybe even every 100 strums. Yeah. But how many fucking times am I strumming, especially if we're going full force in a session and we're going... If we're doing
slides, then...
Yeah, if we're doing slides, there's about...
The guitars are eroding in front of your eyes.
Yeah, and there's something... But it's nice. Yeah, I really don't mind it. I'm like, it's a bit, you know, you've seen Glenn Hansard's guitar, Willie Nelson's guitar, like, those things.
What's Willie Nelson's guitar called? Is it Trigger?
Trigger.
Yeah. There's a little YouTube video about a guy that basically has it on life support, that every year he has to
pick out bits of skin from the guitar and try to keep it together. Like, that guitar is high on energy, but low on wood at this point. The sound hole has been extended a bit over much. But, God, there's so much... You didn't answer my question at all about...
how do I feel?
But you don't have to. If you have something to say, I will come back.
I just have a couple of notes. One is that one of the most recent Assassin's Creed games was set in England and you play a Viking invader. So, yeah, ethically a bit. But anyway.
The extension is in Ireland, isn't it?
The extension's in Ireland, and you finally get to murder Irish people in a video game. I finally get, yeah.
But it's like, God.
We're so overlooked, you know. There's like, we're never there, you know. There's very few video games set in Ireland or anything, even though we have a very big video games industry here with like Larian Studios and Blizzard and fucking the Havoc engine. It's all in Ireland, you know. We have a very strong games industry, but you don't see games set in Ireland and stuff. And I was like, finally, you can buy Assassin's Creed Ragnarok, buy the DLC. You can finally come to Ireland and murder some Irish people. So.
Really? Are you not like finding some Templars here or something that are...
Yeah, but you kill some druids. They're like evil druids. I haven't actually played it. My buddy played it and I was like, what's it like? And he's like, yeah, they're like evil druids that turn into bears or something like that. And I'm like, we'll take it. But
that's a whole topic in itself. Is like how Ireland and Irish people are treated by the world.
I know.
It's like everyone loves Ireland, everyone loves Irish people, but it's also
our depiction in media is shocking.
It's shocking, and there's a real easy kind of the culture is just cartoonishly dealt with in a way that I hate it.
It actually makes me really hurt and angry, because there's also like people will say it to you, oh sure, top of the morning, be gone. Yeah, and sure, you're Irish, you won't mind this at all. I'm like, I mind it a bit, you know. I wouldn't mind some nice representation.
It's great that people aren't doing like that. People, I suppose, are taking it in their stride a little bit, but there is something where you're like,
yeah, we're not.
I was thinking about. We were having dinner with the family in Ennis, and there was a table of tourists next to us, and I was just thinking, like, there's a few things said. I'll leave it at that. But I was just a bit like, I'm starting to understand more and more what Anthony meant when he was talking about working on the cruise ships and the kind of the Begora, Lucky Charms kind of stuff. Where I was not. I understood it before. I suppose I'm feeling it more now. Yeah. Where I was where it's like, it's interesting to me that you guys really want to connect with this, which I completely understand. But I've tried to connect by learning more about it and understanding kind of how it works. Not to say, I'm superior that way. I'm sure I've made mistakes, or I know I've made mistakes there as well. But it's funny to me that you were trying to impose what you've heard about it, rather than seeing what it is actually like when you're here. But I think that especially has to do with American melting pot culture, where people have a really strong connection to the European country they're from. And then they kind of need to hold on to their upbringing.
It's part of their identity.
Their identity is Irish American, and they want that to be really strongly connected to Ireland. I've heard this. I've heard Black Americans say this as well, where they've actually gone to Africa and kind of gone. And I'm sure this is just a story.
No, I've heard
well. But where they're like, oh wow, I actually have, like, they're actually much more American than they thought, because over in America they think, well, we're treated in a shit way or we're treated differently. So I strongly identify with that, but it's the context of being in America. And I think it's the same with Irish Americans then, that they're like, well, I have a really strong connection to this part of it. And a lot of them are amazing and do really open up, but it's
also like, what are they going to base it on? Because every Hollywood movie that depicts an Irish person, we're either, if the 90s we're a terrorist and now we're charming drunks, like those are your options, you know, for Irish people.
And then quite often played by another nationality. There was actually one of the Assassin's Creed games where there's an Irish. There was one Black Sails, which I really liked.
That was my favourite one, yeah.
Yeah, I really loved that one. And the acting in it was actually really good. Yeah. But then there was some kind of extension on that, which also had a piratey theme, but it was an Irish guy. Yeah, he was kind of Irishy in some way. He was like, I don't know what he was called, but he had like Declan or something. It was like really. But they just got a Canadian guy do a horrible Irish accent, and I was like, Why?
Yeah.
There's so many fucking great actors in Ireland.
I know.
You know, and it's so, and it was like, well, that was the crack. And it was just like, no one would ever say it like that, and definitely not spell it like that. You know, it's kind of funny. And I it's very easy now to go, well, Bart, you're guilty of that as well as a Dutch man. But I think, no, not that you would say that, but I suppose it's not about going, oh, people are outside of that and they don't know, but it's about, if you're going to do it, maybe do it well. It's funny that it seems acceptable to do that with Irish. Man,
try spending some time in fucking London. Like, I just, like, anyone who thinks that there's no such thing as racism against Irish people, like, it's this friendly kind of racism, you know. It's this, like, and look, you get this everywhere, you know, and I'm not saying we're the worst off or anything, but, like, definitely there's a lot of, like, for example, if I didn't want to drink on a night, you'll have a Guinness, a Guinness, come on, get you a Guinness, you want a Guinness, don't you? And you're like, I'd love a sparkling water, man. No, you have a Guinness, you're Irish, you'll have a Guinness, you know. And just, like, I think actually Niall Graham said that as well when he was on. But, like, I've absolutely experienced that, and you know, top of the morning shit stuff, and yeah, it's just a funny one. But to go back to, like, representation, like, if these Americans are trying to connect with their Irish heritage, you know, what can they watch? You know, because, like, you know, that's the way we consume media. I mean, they can go play Assassin's Creed and kill a few druids. They can, you know, but like, you know, for a long time, I think the archetypical representation, back to archetypes, the archetypical representation of an Irish man in film was Richard Harris, the Bull McCabe, a big, angry, you know, violent, powerful but blinkered, rigid, you know,
very charming,
charming,
very connected to the ground
and connected to the land, but like in a dark way, and you know, and you're like, and he's a great character. I mean, he's a phenomenal character. But, like, when that's the only depiction you have, and then in the 90s it was just all terrorists. You know, it was just all IRA men. You know, that's what, if you heard an Irish accent, we were coded as terrorists. You know it. And then now it's like charming drunks. P.S. I Love You was that Jerry Butler? He's Scottish or something like that. You know,
the weird thing as well is I actually quite like that film, even though that part of it is horrible. But actually, the story itself is not about. But it was written by an Irish woman, so I'm like, how could she? Maybe she didn't have a say in it. Anyway,
no, I'd say not. But it's just, and so, you know, I would hope that when people go to any country, they try to experience the country, the place, for what it is. But we all have preconceptions. Like, if you 100%. travel to a place, you've probably traveled there because of your probably flawed understanding of it. Like, nobody has the perfect understanding of a country before they go there. That's not possible. I think of myself in China, you know, but hopefully you can then, like, find ways to connect with the place authentically. But yeah, a bit of nice representation. And I know I've said this many times, but I thought Normal People did a great job of depicting Ireland and Irish people and Irish practices like GAA and stuff like that. And it was an English production as well. So, you know,
and it's not, I don't think either of us are saying, also because that would be really cutting into my bread and butter. If we go, you cannot access something if you're from a different place. That's not what we're saying at all, but I think it's about an openness. And I think that's always, sometimes we talk about examples of, like, oh, that's a bit annoying when it happens like that, but it's not a prescriptive thing of, like, so it should never be that way. Like, I think actually Jared Butler was actually good for that character because he's lovable and charming, but you're just like, oh, what a shame that they didn't give him time to work with an accent coach. You know, kind of way, or I don't know, but it's. I actually saw an interview with Paul Mescal yesterday. They're like, "You're always playing someone sad and sexy." I thought that was kind of funny. So we had the Bull McCabe, and now we have sad and sexy.
Sad, sexy.
It's just like, I'm trying to get you through the sadness with sexy.
That is his brand, isn't it? Sad and sexy.
He's very handsome man. If I was that way oriented, I'd date him.
Yeah, God, and After Sun is such a movie, and that's a beautiful One of the things I really love about that movie is that Paul Mescal has a very particular North England accent, and I think it's, somebody can correct me please, but I think it's specifically York. As in, I know some people, I work with people in York and they have that accent, and it's not like Manchester or Liverpool or Birmingham where it's like really, really identifiable. Is that kind of
Sean Beanie kind of?
Maybe a bit, yeah. I can't, because Sean Bean uses a few accents, so I'm not sure.
True.
But like, for me, it added so much to the character that you have this like soft but very specific accent. So he wasn't like leaning on the accent like a crutch. It like really supported. You know, it placed him. That movie would have sounded different if he had an East London accent, you know? Like,
I loved Andrew Scott in Sherlock.
Moriarty.
That was, I remember him saying something like, I could just do general English villain, or I'll use my own, is it Churchtown or something, accent. And it was just so menacing.
Yeah. And unexpected.
I will burn the heart out of you. Like with a really soft T, and you're just like, fuck. You call him Mescal.
Yeah.
Is it not Mescal?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
But that's an interesting one. I'm not putting you on the spot, but it's an interesting one sometimes that I've noticed where I will always just gravitate to, I think that's what a person uses or whatever. But sometimes, maybe I'm not going to be able to get this across. But then sometimes, when you say that, I feel you have a different connection with it.
Oh yeah, I get it. But like, it can put you wrong as well. Like apparently, Saoirse Ronan, like I think most people would pronounce her name Saoirse.
Yeah.
In most parts of Ireland, but she pronounces it Saoirse.
Saoirse, yeah.
You know, so who knows? And then there's the whole Irish thing, the terrible, terrible suffering of any woman in Ireland named Marie, and you never know if it's Mary or Marie.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's the one I've gotten wrong.
Yeah, I get it. I think it's worse than a coin toss for me. I think 80% of the time I get it wrong.
You got a magnet on the wrong side.
Statistically doesn't make any sense. Anyway, you asked me. I'm not dodging the question. What was the question? Basically, how's my relationship to here?
Well, how do you like? We talked because now we took actually place quite wide, which is nice because it was a very different perspective. But how is your how is we talked the first episode a lot about living here in North Clare. You don't have to fucking do a whole biography, but I just want to like, how has it changed in the last 2 years?
This is a weird thing to say. I feel like I don't need to go out and find it as much. I think when you move to a new place, you're looking for people and connection, and you know, what's going on, what's happening. I'll go to that gig. Where's a good place to eat? Where's a good place to drink? Where's a good place to hear music? You know, I really want to. I'm interested in what they're doing, and you're going out an awful lot more. Whereas like this year, I feel like I've been in place a lot more, as in like, you know, for example, like in the house. I'm actually in the house an awful lot more. A lot of the work and the projects I've been doing are happening here. And it's like when I go out, it's not like I'm seeking. It's like I'm just connecting. It's like my friend is playing a gig. We are going to go to our favorite restaurant for this like event and stuff. And it's almost like the place is meeting me halfway rather than me having to go out and find it. It really feels like the place is giving an awful lot to me. I feel like the place is giving an awful lot. And that waxes and wanes. You know, there are times when things flow easily and times when you have to push a little bit or knuckle down a little bit.
That's also life.
Yeah, that's the way it is. I don't expect it to be this way forever. But it feels, I feel very, very happy to be here. Very nourished. It's like, I know where I can get good food. I know where I can get good drink. I know where I can get good company. I know where I can get good music. Fucking hell. I know where I can go for a nice hike. Like, I mean, I
provide at least 4 of them.
Yeah. Just walk.
Hike, drink.
Yeah. We don't need to talk about my stag again. But How about yourself?
What you said really resonated with me, that it's more a meeting halfway. Really at the beginning, you're really trying to kind of go, hey, what's this place? I want to know a lot about it. And now it feels, I think Breed might have said this last season, but where there's something about now also the land is getting to know you. And it feels like, and you spoke about this a lot as well, about the cultural exchange, where at the beginning I felt much more like, okay, I have to listen and take it in and see the way things are done. And now there's still a lot of that, and that always needs to be there, but there's also a bit more of me going, hey, there's a few gaps here that I might fill out, but then also just a lovely energetic of, like I've talked about this before, moving into the Burren, I found the energy quite heavy, and I was a bit like, how am I going to deal with all the stuff that is around here? Actually, on the weekend, Michaela actually said she tells that story to a lot of people because she really found it when she was in the Burren for 2 weeks. She was like, she was really drawn to it, and then she was like, I don't know if I'm able to live here right now because there's so much going on. But I found that has softened much because it's also now meeting me and kind of feeding into me a little bit, which my small ego kind of wants to go that's a bit grandiose, but no, I think it's a dynamic.
Yeah, we're actors within ecosystems.
Yeah, and then the system is kind of going, oh yeah, no, he's there. So there's a bit of that.
Yep.
We know what's happening in that space, and it's it's nice to. I've really enjoyed this year, tending a little bit to the land, just a bit of gardening, which I never really did before. Tiny bit of it, really, and. Also knowing it a lot better, going like, okay, that's where we do this and that's where you can do that, and a lot more options, and that works really nicely. And it's nice to see the kids with that as well, where they're, Sammy was showing me how to do a hand pass in Gaelic football yesterday, and I was like, fucking brilliant.
There we go.
Well,
that's lovely, Bart. We check in again another year. So we're
I said 2 years, but it's really only a year and a tiny bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Feels a lot longer.
Yeah.
But maybe that's because 3 seasons as well.
Yeah, that's it. Well, long may it continue to feel long.
Long may it continue to feel long. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. This has been Weshtern Philosophy. Follow us on all the socials at Weshtern Philosophy Pod. If you want to support the podcast, you can join our Patreon to help the show grow, or make a one-off donation via the Ko-fi link in the episode description. We'll be back in a few months with more chats, guests, topics, and crack. Enjoy the summer.